it's Ashley from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and welcome back to my channel where I make a lot of cake and cookie decorating tutorials as well as give a lot of baking business tips. And this is pretty much my one and only Halloween themed video that I'm making this year, so I really do hope you enjoy it. In the description box below, I will be sure to link my sugar cookie video. It's just a classic roll out sugar cookie dough, super easy to use, and it's little to no spread at all. So it's definitely my go-to, and it's the one I use pretty much in all of my videos. I'm also going to be linking my pipe and flood consistency royal icing tutorial, just so that you got a really good idea on what type of consistency you're going to need, because I tend to use that consistency for the entirety of this video with the exception of a few details. My friend had asked me a little while ago if I wanted all of this meringue powder that she had stocked up. She said it wasn't really her favorite, and I can kind of see why. So I've been using it now for a couple of months. Normally, I don't have to outline all of my cookies like this and then flood it. Normally, I can just pipe it and flood it right away with the usual meringue powder that I use. But for some reason, this particular meringue powder, it does tend to stiffen up the icing a little bit, but it's deceiving. It's like when it's in the bowl, it looks like it's going to make the perfect pipe and flood consistency, and it loosens up really quickly, and it actually ends up over flooding on the cookie. So you might notice that when I initially pipe all of this pipe and flood consistency, it looks really rigid and it looks like it's not going to be smooth. So what I have to end up doing with this particular meringue powder is I actually do have to shake and knock the cookie. And I know that there's so many different methods to pipe and flood, but when you're working with different types of meringue powders, it does matter. So you might have to choose a few different ways to get that pipe and flood consistency. I wanted to make some edible prints for these particular cookies, so a huge shout out to Inkedibles, which is a US-based company that provides quality prints, reliability, one-on-one training, and support to get you all set up with your edible ink printing. And if you don't want to do the printing yourself, you can order custom printed toppers simply by uploading your image or logo, and Inkedibles will have them delivered to your door within days. This was the standard edible ink printer sent to me by Inkedibles, and honestly, it was so easy to use. It really helped me to have that one-on-one support when I was actually setting up the printer, because I think I would have been totally lost without it. I created these custom labels by using Canva so that I could write exactly what I wanted to write on each of these labels. I wanted to keep it whimsical and a little bit spooky as well, and then I just used one of the icing sheets. But you can also use rice paper too, so in future I'm definitely going to show you how to do that as well. And it really is just like printing on standard paper, only it's edible, so it's obviously way more fun. And make sure that you get that cut really nice and close so it looks realistic. And my big thing when it comes to edible images is I don't just want it to look like I stuck an image on a cake or on a cookie. I actually want it to look integrated into the design. There are multiple ways that you can adhere the edible image to your project, but in this case, since I already had royal icing, this one was the best bet. Now you'll notice I didn't just place it directly on wet royal icing. I find that sometimes when I do this, it actually ends up eating up the image, or sometimes the image can sink into the cookie. So I like to make sure that the surface of the cookie is completely dry first, and then I put it on. And I mean dry, because nothing is worse than puncturing your cookie when you're attaching those final pieces. I felt like the cookie was missing a little something, so I decided to use a little bit of fondant. You could also do this with chocolate if you have that on hand. And I have this great little skull mold that I can really only use if I'm doing like a pirate cake or if it's Halloween. So I try to use it at every turn. And I just used a little bit of royal icing to give these skulls more detail. I have become a very opportunistic sugar, cookie, and cake decorator. And what I mean by that is, sure, there's a lot of different products that can do these things like paint on a cookie or paint on fondant, but a lot of the stuff that you already have out can also do the same job. It just might not be specifically for that. I used to always think that in order to paint on cookies, I always needed to get out my food colorant and then mix it with a little bit of vodka or mix it with a little bit of lemon extract in order to make it into that paint consistency, or I needed to get edible paints. When the truth of the matter is, when it's a really small portion, I could get away with just using the edible food colorant, or I could get away with a little bit of royal icing that was thinned out, or as you'll see later on in the video, I tend to use a lot of airbrush colors because I personally have a lot of airbrush colors on hand. I am using tipless piping bags, but if you do not have tipless piping bags, you can definitely use a coupler with a number 2 tip is what I recommend. Number 2 is my go-to for sugar cookies. It's big enough that you're going to be able to flood things really easily, but still also do your detail work with it as well. I find number 1s are very, very, very tiny and they get clogged up really, really easily. So I tend to not use them as often. Today's sugar cookies are really not that complicated at all. A lot of it is just piping and flooding. And now this is why pipe and flood consistency is important. You see how I'm doing these spiders here? So first I laid down the legs, make sure they dried up a little bit, and then I put the body on over top, and I want it to keep that circular shape. So you do need pipe and flood consistency. Otherwise, it'll just flood everywhere and you'll be sad because you'll be wiping your cookies over and over again. Also notice that I left a gap. I wanted the top and bottom portion to dry first so that I could add in that little body part. Honestly, I don't know how correct that spider's body is, but it looks like a spider to me, so I think it's good enough. And then after these skulls were done fully drying, which I did use my dehydration trick for, if you don't know what that is, I basically pop in all of my cookies at 175 degrees Fahrenheit for about 10 minutes, and then it gets that surface nice and dry so that I can move on to the next step. And for those spider webs there, I did use a thickened royal icing, so that is no longer pipe and flood. It is very nice and thick so that I can get those details. To thicken up that royal icing, for every cup of icing sugar that you add, it's approximately 1 tablespoon of meringue powder, but really just eyeball it and you'll probably be fine. You just want it nice and thick and pipeable. And of course, if it gets too thick, add a little bit of water. I was feeling purple on this particular day when I decorated, so I decided to add on some fondant flowers. I love this mold. It's so easy to use, and it always just gives me that pop wherever I need it. On a wedding cake, on a birthday cake, on Halloween cookies, why not? And a little tip for when you're actually using these molds, if you're finding that your fondant maybe is too stretchy or it's not coming out of the mold, add in a little bit of cornstarch. I find that that just helps keep things a little bit stiffer, and then you're able to pop that out really, really easily. These eyeball cookies I find are very popular because they're so much smaller and people feel like if they eat 5 of them, it's somehow less than a big cookie, which I totally understand that cookie math. And I apologize for some of these shots, guys. I was very tired while filming some of this, so I end up adding on some white details, which really help to make that pop. The bats felt a little bit plain to me, and I didn't really know what to add on, but I decided that Halloween actually fit perfectly across this entire body, and I just love piping script. I hope this type of script never goes out of style because it took me so long to kind of learn what handwriting I would use on my cookies and cakes. And if you really struggle with writing, don't worry, we've all been there. Always practice on a cookie that is very, very dry. That way when you scrape it off, it's not such a big deal. And all of the gold detailing you see on my cookies is made with a little bit of luster dust mixed with vodka and just brushed on. And here I'm using my airbrushing system to make these potion bottles. Originally I was going to do a bunch of different colors, but I think going with the purple scheme, I decided let's stick with purple. It tends to look better with your cookies when you stick to about 3 to 5 colors. And another edible image for good measure, and this time you can see I'm stylizing it so that it sticks out to the side. I really love that these sugar sheets are nice and thick and strong, so I can do that. And a few more details, and you'll notice that for those type of swirly details, I'm really holding that piping bag up high from the cookie and letting it drop down. I find I get way more control that way. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading weekly, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys. Happy Halloween! Bye!